if you can't feel at ease with yourself, I think that is a call for change within yourself. And that, I think, is where the call to level up is. You can choose to ignore it, which will do you no good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to address it, even though you might not know what the heck is it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know where to start.
It seems to me that you're trying to now look beyond validation from others to validation from self, right? And I think that's beautiful, by the way, because validation from self is something you can control, right? You can control when to tell yourself, like, hey, good job, you did well. But then also combining that with a feeling of helplessness and lost, right? It's kind of what I'm feeling from you, where, hey, I am now in the society, I'm living here, I'm doing my thing, and there's so many things that are new to me that are not so black and white.
You realize life isn't fair.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you really have to be the one to set your standards
Mm-hmm.
and then hold yourself accountable to it. No one else can do that for you or set it for you.
So, welcome to the Level Up podcast. Today we are joined by a very special guest, Nadine from the Quick3 family. And we're here to talk about breakthroughs in places where we feel stuck, in places where we think that we could use a little more guidance, and really try to see that there's a different way around the situations that we find ourselves in to help us feel unblocked and really find out what leveling up in life means to us and how to pursue it in the best way. Because God knows there's so many resources out there that we could be looking at that could be helping our lives, but really which one of those are the most useful for us and how do we apply it, immediately to make meaningful impacts in the day-to-day lives that we lead. So without further ado, Nadine, can I get you to introduce yourself a little bit? Who you are, perhaps what you do, and specifically, what does leveling up mean to you?
Yeah, so I'm Nadine. I live in Vancouver, BC. I work in tech, a software company, business solutions company, but I support a software side and work to support and liaise between partners and clients. Um, Leveling up to me is just being able to be better than you were yesterday. As simple as that. There's really no benchmark. It's different for everyone. And the only focus really is you. You can choose a focus, whether it might be level up your finances, level up your relationships, But in essence, we all have to give ourselves grace in order to move forward. So, um, to me, leveling up is just being wholesome to yourself and in turn to others around you.
I love that. Where do you find that you are successful in this, in being wholesome to self, which I think that's a lovely statement. And also, where do you feel like you're failing in that?
Yeah, being wholesome to self is difficult actually.
Mm-hmm.
I find it's easier to focus on others. It's easier to serve others, to make others happy, to feel like you're productive or that you are contributing to society or to your family's growth by servitude rather than focusing on growing the self. And that's where I used to be stuck. I was always at war with myself where I never had time to myself because I always had something I can do for someone else. And it's not a bad way to live, but you get to a point where if you don't take care of yourself, everything else will collapse underneath you. Yes. So where I find myself now is recovering and becoming stronger than I ever was. Yeah, learning new techniques to self-love, to be able to put my value forward and first, and then offer that in extension to others. Yeah, it's difficult to put into words until you start talking about applying it in life, right? For example, when you're growing up as a kid, you're getting honors. You're the apple of your parents' eye. I think that's the saying.
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah. And that was your source of honor, pride. But you get to a certain age, and suddenly, even if you want to continue being that, it gets to a point where their validation or their point of view of you will not be able to replace your own view of yourself. You might end up even just lying to yourself for years, like thinking, trying to see things from others' perspective means you're not solidifying your own values, your own identity. And that's what I did in my life. I just wanted others around me happy. But I learned, thanks to insights from others, thanks to reaching out and having conversations. Sometimes it's difficult when you're in a bubble. You've always been close-knit with family. You grew up with the same friends and relatives. They see you as this character, so you believe that's who you should be. But when you have the opportunity in college, for me, or even after college, graduate, where you're exposed to the real world, where you can no longer turn a blind eye to your struggles because you're naturally exposed to conversations about politics. You have to deal with bureaucracy in the workplace, whatever the case might be, or simply even simple things like people having a fun chat about their hobbies. You want to fit in with your colleagues. You're finding a place to belong, and you realize, well, this is who people have always told me I am. But does that really mean that's who I am? Because now you're exposed to your coworkers inviting you to go hiking, to go swimming, things that you don't regularly do, to come over to their house, and you're like, hold up, I'm not supposed to talk to strangers, but I'm getting to know you and I work with you, so you're not a stranger. Very simple things that contradict what you were taught. And really, life isn't black and white. And that's where I struggled. I wanted a world that was black and white. There's right, there's wrong.
I understand.
But the gray lines are where you really should live, because that's where you're always testing yourself and finding out who you are. So that's where I'm at now. And I've had breakthroughs. I've had breaking points as well.
Of course. They come hand in hand.
Yes, they do come hand in hand. And the best part is, even in your darkest moments, sometimes the unexpected kindness, even from a stranger or someone you felt you weren't close with, it changes how you see things. It makes you grateful in a manner that you couldn't explain at the time. You were just unable to see any solution, and something comes along that you never expected, and that is grace, and that is the opportunity to level up, I think. When you feel something is not sitting right, I think a lot of people are scared of change. They're scared of changing their routine, or what others might think about them if they start acting differently or making choices that they normally wouldn't. But if you can't feel at ease with yourself, I think that is a call for change within yourself. And that, I think, is where the call to level up is. And you can choose to ignore it, which will do you no good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to address it, even though you might not know what the heck is it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know where to start. Like, what is bugging me? Is it my finances? Is it my current place of living? Like, is it something in the past? Is it something in the present? There will be so many questions, and you can't answer it all yourself. I think it's healthy to practice certain habits, like if you're too shy, if you're an introvert, talking to ChatGPT is fine.
Yeah, it's fine,
It's
actually.
fine.
Yeah.
You might get ideas of resources that protect your anonymity, reaching out to a counselor, using your I don't know, medical benefits. Sometimes being able to learn simple skills like how to converse or how to bring up a topic in a very casual manner, even though to you it might be a serious topic. And that's how you start developing skills that will help you to level up, that will help you to find what it is that isn't sitting well in your life that you need to address, that you need to level up. And
Yeah.
I went on a
No, it's
trail
perfectly
there.
fine. No. I mean, I think that is the purpose of this podcast, right? Is to be able to help you really and focus on you in this situation, to talk about how you're feeling about these aspects of your life and your journey through that. So by all means, elaborate, because I think the more you do, the more people there who are listening, who might be in your shoes, can resonate with different parts of your story. So let me try to recap what you shared, right? To make sure I got it all. What I understand right now is that you kind of had grown up with the sole desire to make parents happy, right? To satisfy what they wanted out of you, to live a life according to their whims and their wants. And of course, you did that because you wanted to get validation from them. You wanted to get their approval, right? And as kids, we all do, right? I think this is like very standard and very normal. We can all resonate with that. The feeling of wanting to impress someone that you think highly of, you respect. And I think I also noticed in your, response earlier that there are times now where even if you do follow seemingly all their wants, you still don't get the validation that you're craving, right? They don't give you that, oh, you're such a good daughter, you did so well, they might still treat you as a child, right? And so what's happening there is, it seems to me that you're trying to now look beyond validation from others to validation from self, right? And I think that's beautiful, by the way, because validation from self is something you can control, right? You can control when to tell yourself, like, hey, good job, you did well. You can't control when someone else is going to be in a good mood or a bad mood and emotionally available to give you the response that you need, right? Or you feel that you want. So I think that's great. But then also combining that with a feeling of helplessness and lost, right? It's kind of what I'm feeling from you, where, hey, I am now in the society, I'm living here, I'm doing my thing, and there's so many things that are new to me that are not so black and white, that are not so clear to me, that like, hey, I followed this rule, my parents set out for me, things will be okay. It's like, no, there's like infinite possibilities in between, right? And what do I do from there? Did I get that right? I just want to make sure. Is that a concise?
Yeah, it's pretty concise, I would say.
Okay.
You realize life isn't fair. And that's why you really have to be the one to set your standards and then hold yourself accountable to it. No one else can do that for you or set it for you. Like, you realize, I've been the good child all these years, and they've been the bad child. And and they do something like buy a gift on Christmas to give the parents. And all of a sudden that gets all the lauding, and you're just like, I've been doing that years. Like, and then you start questioning what it is. And that's just a funny example to bring forward.
So who gives a gift? Your siblings or your parents or someone else?
Yeah. For example, well, it doesn't really run in my family, but that's just a very typical example where, there's two siblings, let's say, one who's always been doing what their parents wanted and following the righteous path or the path their parents envisioned, becoming a doctor, they never questioned what they want. They
Mhm.
just did what was expected of them.
Yeah.
There's the other who's the rebel, there's
Mm.
always labels and generalizations in
Yeah.
our life, and they grow up fine, independent.
Mhm.
They both grow up fine, but the guy who grew up following all of the whims and wants of others
Mhm.
grows up sometimes comes to a point in life where they're faced with a challenge
Mhm.
that they don't know how to respond to because they're waiting for what is expected of me.
Sure.
And
Mhm.
whereas the rebel, well, they've had all the opportunity to
Mhm.
just do whatever they want, listen to their gut, follow
Yeah.
their instincts.
Mhm.
And they've also probably come to a point in their life where they hurt someone by accident
Sure.
because of who they are.
Mm.
Just being themselves, which there's no fault to. We
Mhm.
just have to learn to adapt to others, and they learn compassion. They learn how to just be sweet, and they go back to the parents, and they do things. They serve them, right? Where the parents are not accustomed to this because, hey, that's my rebel child, black sheep
Mm.
of the family, or not even just
Mhm.
the wild one, and you think that's and that's just kind of the example I was pointing at.
Sure.
But
Maybe if I can jump in here.
yeah.
I think this is a good thing to zoom in on is that I love that you're trying to embrace your individuality now. I think that's like a way I can explain it where it's like, hey, not a life led by others, but what is a life led by me and who am I and all these kind of questions, right? So Nadine, who are you, right? Are you a good child? Are you a rebel? Are you a follower? Are you a leader? Like, and you don't have to have a clear answer here. Feel free to just verbalize whatever comes up to your mind, but like, who are you?
Yeah, I'd say I'm an extremist. I enjoy the extremes,
Mm-hmm.
whether that be playing a follower for or a very devoted follower for a portion of time, and then later on playing the leader role. It's very dependent. I find it difficult to moderate. So that's the skill that I'm trying to teach myself. When I'm all in, I just jump without even testing the waters. I'm like, okay, let's just do it. Like, we'll find a way to make this idea thrive because it resonates so strongly. Let's just figure it out. And if things don't work out, then we'll backtrack. And as brave as that may sound, risks and all, just putting your foot forward and diving head first, the there's a point in life where we're all here. We're all busy. We all have very limited amount of time. And so we have to be smart about where we're using it. So now instead of diving headfirst into every great idea that comes to mind or that someone might mention, because the longer you live life, the more people you know. And as much as, hey, I used to be able to always just, hey, you thought of that, let's do it. You thought of that, let's do it. That's no longer the case because we all have responsibilities. We all have to work. And now you have to be smart about it. And I think when you're forced to start prioritizing, that's when you can finally identify who you are. So for me, as an extremist, I am finding the moderation in my time where it used to be I work, and after work, you want to go there? Let's do it. You want to go there? Let's do it. And by the time the weekend rolls around, I'm supposed to be pumped and full of energy and excited for all the activities to come, but I might feel drained because I never moderated myself. I exhausted the extent of my physical capabilities. or mental capabilities, because work is mentally taxing. Going out every day, social taxing, and possibly still trying to fit in workouts here and there. You learn that balance is very important. There are life lessons that that some people are like, that's common sense, but for you, until you live it, until you start doing it, it's tough. And
so jumping in, like, because I'm trying to help you like kind of understand this a bit more, and also for me to understand a bit more too, is that maybe I'll ask two different questions and you can feel like which one is a better thing to answer, right?
Yeah.
Or easier to answer for you. One is, how well do you think you know yourself on a scale of 0 to 10? And the second one is, you mentioned that there's the extremist and there's the balanced Nadine. Which one is the real you, so to speak? And which one is influenced by others?
So from a scale of 1 to 10, how well I know myself, I think I'm now at a 6.57.
Okay.
I'm getting to know myself better, much better than before. And as for the second question, which one is the real me? I think they're both me. And the problem that crops up is that I realize this too late. So sometimes, for example, a friendship might have been broken because I never realized this about myself. Like, I would be completely out of balance, but always excited to hang out. And when I'm in front of that person, I'm bringing this energy that when they're not in front of me, it's completely vanished. So they only see, let's say, the extreme side of me, the extremely happy social side. And that's not, there's more to me than just that side. And if I'm unable to be my full self around them, if I'm only showing them one face all the time, and I'm creating that expectation that I didn't intend to create. I just always wanted to be my best self, or always, bring the laughter, bring the smiles. Let's have a good time. That's a point of hanging out, right? Let's forget the troubles. Let's just create memories. And sometimes if you don't acknowledge that, even living with that good intention can cause, because of the expectations that you've built that are unrealistic, that can cause great strife in the relationship, despite all the years and the effort that you might have put in. Like, the effort ends up translating into your thoughts of, I'm tired, but I promised that I'd go out with them. And you start harboring a little bit of just a little bit of resentment.
It could be a lot. It doesn't have to be a little bit.
A lot of resentment. It grows, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, this week we met, it was fun, and I went home and I crashed because that was the extent of what I am able to do. And then next week, I already made promises with you again because we saw something fun to do and we said, let's do that next time. And next week comes and then it grows, that the resentment every time you see each other, rather than just being a great time. And you weren't sure why. And that's where maybe the strife might be. And that is all because I simply didn't know myself. I did not express myself like, oh, let's do that. But I can't commit right now. Like, I have to look at my schedule. I have lots of meetings. Like, I don't know how I'll feel coming the weekend. It's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to break what they expect of you.
It's okay to say no.
It's okay to say no. Exactly. Yeah. Yes, you got that right. And I think I was lost. You're right. And I probably sound like I'm still lost in all of our conversations so far.
Which is good. It's okay, right? We all are lost.
Yeah. But we're also not alone. Like, the relationships, people you've come across, encountered, like I said, kindness can come from the most unexpected places or the expected places. You just have to ask the right question, find the right opportunity, have the conversation, get some courage to do that. And a friend of mine, we weren't really having a serious conversation, just regular texts back and forth. And I've always been curious about how other people live their lives, because I have all these questions about who am I actually? What have I been doing with my life? How did I get here? Like, what did my younger self expect me to be? And why did I not go that route? How come I'm not who I envisioned myself to be? And these questions sometimes can get you down, because you're just like, does that mean, where was the turning point? Where did things start going wrong? Or where did I start getting lost? Like, or losing who I am? Like, I never used to think about these. And maybe you never lost yourself. Maybe it's just not something you addressed or acknowledged before. It could be many factors. But when I was asking how they manage your day to day, or I'm sorry, I was apologizing, because I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm always talking about work, always talking about stress, always talking about things that you don't want to spend your time thinking about when when you're off work, when you're trying to live life. She said, when I'm not working, I just try to focus on things that make me happy. And that resonated with me, because I'm like, that's such a simple concept. And it makes sense. It 100% makes sense. And
no-brainer, right?
It's a no-brainer. It also explains why people who are doing what they love doing can do it, paid, not paid. They don't calculate it. They just do it. And it becomes part of who they are and how they live. It's not who they are per se, but people start like resonating what they do with who they are, because of how much it's resonated with them and how happy it makes them. And I realized when you're trying to conform yourself to certain expectations, whether it's societal, whether it's obligations from your upbringing, whatever the case might be, you lose sight of that common sense. So now I'm just focusing on things that make me happy, and that's the perfect gauge for me. Like, do I enjoy spending time with this person? Because people grow in and out of who they used to be, or they change, right? And who you used to always rely on and hang out with, you guys have that amazing relationship, but it doesn't mean you have to always be that for each other for the rest of your lives, right? That's the beauty. People come in and out of your life, but it's never a permanent goodbye, right? And I'm learning that, and I'm applying it in everything in my life. Am I happy with being obsessive with journaling everything I do, making a resonance calendar and playing with databases? And like, it's really fun, but what am I getting out of it? Is it just because I enjoy the process? Is it a skill that I never realized I have a great interest in, that I can actually turn into profit and make into my career? Questions like that start cropping up. And even when I'm conversing with others, like, this is a topic I can talk to you about, and we can have fun. We can feel like that was a great use of time. Whereas if I was to bring it to my sibling, let's say, she's not on these aren't priorities for her, or she doesn't understand my obsession with diving into productivity softwares and playing around with data, or recording everything that I'm doing every day, what meal I've eaten, how many calories I've burned, like, am I checking off my exercises and habit tracker? She's like, geez, can you just chill? Like, just, life will happen. You don't need to stress about it, and then rather than having a fun, productive conversation, we start contesting, which in itself can be productive, because I can see a different point of view and perspective. But if it's not a fun time for her, it's not a conversation I want to push. And I think that helps you learn to navigate life. The people who you can seek out for certain topics, the people who you can rely on, the people who you enjoy spending time with, certain activities that you can thrive in when you're together, and certain activities that maybe I'll find someone else to do that with or talk about that with. And while you're discovering this about yourself, you're already learning about yourself and developing skills that will help you level up. And I think that's just where I am right now. So when people are like, can you tell me like why you feel this is such a profound change in your life, or why you're always saying thank you to me? And I'm just, it's hard for me to explain. You just came at a point in my life where you opened my eyes to something that for me was profound, but for you it's a normal everyday thing. And it's really fun.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So first of all, Nadine, I really appreciate you sharing all this with me. I think you thought very deeply about it, obviously, right? You've questioned yourself many, many times. You've tried to observe your surroundings, right? To see how other people are living their lives and how to apply whatever you see into your own as well. And I think it's very valuable for you to kind of open this up and break it out, right? In the sense that like try to talk about it, try to see what lands and what sticks, and like see what is useful and what is not useful, so to speak. So there's a few things I think I want to do for you, and it depends on what you think you need right now, right? You mentioned a few challenges, right? And I categorize them as challenges because you can always improve in certain aspects of them. One is like, okay, knowing what topic to talk about with different people with different perspectives. That's one thing I can definitely talk about. Another one is understanding yourself, right? Like, how come the self like, what was the turning point for you, right? And how come it took so long, perhaps, to get here, right? If there's any thought about that, I can also help you answer those questions. But really, I think what I want to aim on is, we're all 60, 70% lost, I think, if not more or less, right? I think that's a very good rough gauge for everybody. And I think that's a very normal part of the process. That's what makes us human, right? We're always just discovering things about ourselves and about others. And the moment you think you know yourself, you actually don't. And then you like level up and then you realize everything changes again. So would you like to talk a bit about that phenomenon? Is that something that would be interesting to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So hopefully this is also going to be very enlightening and then also help other people at home, because this is almost exactly the same situation that I went through, right? So the way I like to describe it is that like we all have different perspectives that we look at life with. And I kind of see it as a linear series. Like you go through each progression one by one and you kind of level up through the different perspectives. And I call them the 9 perspectives of the Better Life Framework, is what I'm kind of thinking about. And it's based on like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's based on like, developmental levels, cognitive developmental theory. Like there's a lot of different, very well researched topics on this already. And I kind of figure out how to put it together, where the most basic, kind of perspective is survival, right? We all just want to survive, and we, kind of grow up and our basic need is like, oh, I need to go to the washroom. Go to the washroom. There's, I'm hungry. There's a nice tasty chicken in front of me. I'm going to eat it, right? Those are very basic drives that kind of make us do things. But then we realize as we grow up that we can't be self-sufficient. We need parents to take care of us. So we become dependent on others, right? We become dependent on our survival. It's on someone else giving us the things that we need. Now there's good and bad. The good is that we learn that someone out there will take care of us. Fantastic. That's a wonderful thing to know and makes us feel loved and cared for and so on. The bad thing is that we then perceive that because they're giving us our needs, they should also give us our wants. But as we grow up, we realize the things that our parents want is very different from what we want. They might want us to take a certain career path. They might also want us to be a certain type of child, a perfect child, so to speak, right? And that's when we start breaking out and we say, hey, we have things that we want outside of them, right? And typically we break through this as long as we have our basic needs met. Hey, if our parents are taking care of our shelter and our food, or we have a stable sort of income, then we start figuring out like, hey, what do I want in my life? And how do I get those things that I want? And so a lot of that ends up becoming like trying to, go out and win in life, right? The rat race, so to speak, right? And we've all been in that, right? Whether it be at school, trying to get the best marks, or at work, trying to get that promotion. We're all just trying to get things we want out of the world. And we're doing things to try to fit into the transactions that we believe are out there. So we give something and we get something, right? Now, that's actually where we start looking into a lot about like people's approaches to the give and take situation. Some of us are givers, right? And I think we've lived a life where we learned from childhood that giving usually gets us something, right? If we can give our whole to our family, we will be taken care of. And then we start applying that into everyday life. Hey, let's give to everybody that we can, right? And someday it'll come back. We don't have to, it doesn't have to come back, but someday hopefully it comes back. But then we get frustrated because sometimes it doesn't come back. Sometimes you spend, weeks and weeks and weeks with some of your friends, right, that you thought were good friends, and that they would kind of understand at some point, I need something back here, and you don't get it. And that's frustrating. That's super frustrating. So what the next perspective after that is what I call the belonging perspective. We crave belonging. We want to be around people that are like us, that give like us, that we together we can do more, where we don't feel like we're being shortchanged, right? And that actually takes up a lot of our bandwidth, right? In that sense, we tend to go and search and search and search and try to find the perfect people. And if we don't find the perfect people, we try and make them the perfect people. We go and find the friends and we're like, hey, you can do this for me, do this, do this, do this. And then it seems a bit controlling perhaps sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. That's how it is, right? We're looking for that belonging and we're desperate to get it. Now, the next stage after that, which is another beautiful stage, is that we realize that, hey, everyone's their own people, right? No one else can really, there's no perfect group to belong to, right? And you start, like you said, trying to figure out, like, okay, this group of people, they talk about this, they like this thing. This group of people, they like doing this thing. So you kind of segment your groups now. We call that the systems perspective, where you're creating a system for yourself where you're not just blindly saying, hey, you're my best friend, you do everything with me, right? No, it's like, okay, you are good at this thing and you like doing this thing and I like doing this thing with you. But if I start talking about this thing, you're not interested at all, right? So you're trying to figure out like, where you can play around. And that's a bit of the perspective that you're in actually, which is really good. And why we try to identify these is because it's useful to see what perspective you're thinking in so that you know how to operate to get the most out of that situation. Because if you try to operate in that situation with a different perspective, right, whether it be I don't want to use the words lower or higher, but different perspective, right? Then you'll actually be, shortchanging yourself because you're not going to get the thing that you want, right? You're not going to get the happiness that you want out of that situation. But one thing I also noticed, Nadine, is that you're actually also moving into what we call the sixth perspective, which is letting go, right? Embracing your individuality, realizing that, hey, all these things that you want and you think you want probably came from someone else. Probably came from like society telling you what you needed to do or your parents telling you what you need to do. And it wasn't really talking to yourself. And I think this is something that a lot of people are discovering now today, which is I love is that, hey, you can read infinite textbooks and infinite productivity books and infinite self-help books to try to improve your life. But ultimately, you need to talk to yourself to realize what needs to be improved. Who am I, right? What do I want? What do I care about? And really getting deep into understanding who you are as an individual and letting that influence your decision making, right? And then as you see, all these perspectives built on each other, right? Hey, if you know who you are as an individual, you can then go back to your systems perspective and actually set the systems that will make sense for you to get what you want, right? And then if you know what you actually want, you can go back down and you can say, hey, I now know what group I want to be around, right? That will have the flexibility to be there for me for the majority of my needs, right? My wants. And then I can find additional things to help me with the rest, right? And then one thing that I think is really important for people in the letting go perspective is because we are so live and let go, right? We are so like, okay, everyone's their own people. I'm my own person. I'm trying to figure myself out. They're figuring themselves out. Sometimes we can get hurt. We give a lot of time at this point, right? We try to say, hey, I will, be there for you because that's what I want. But sometimes that doesn't protect you. Sometimes people take advantage of that, right? As you're saying, right? And so what's really helpful here is trying to your best to also apply some of the seventh perspective, which is boundaries, right? Setting the right boundaries for yourself is game changing. Realizing that you can say no and it's okay to say no is the best thing ever. It's the biggest superpower I think anyone can have. Because I think what we realize is people are okay if you say no, right? But if you say no in a very particular way, and let me explain that because I think a lot of people, even back at home, might not understand this, is that if you're trying to say no in a systems perspective, you say it from the perspective of, hey, I want things, and no, You are my friend for playing video games. You're my friend for doing karaoke. You're my friend for talking about deep things. Blah, 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 blah. Do it, right? It's a very me thing. But when you are in the boundaries perspective, when you say no, you're actually saying like, hey, I actually fully understand that that's how you're thinking. I get it. I totally get that this is what you want and this is the kind of interaction you're looking from me. I'm sorry, but I'm not able to do that. I have obligations. I got work to do. But if you like, we can try to figure something out when I do have the time. Game changing, because they now realize that you respect that they have wants. You're hearing them out and you're just saying, I can't do it. It's hard. They won't say no to that. Or they can't say no to that because they realize that you have done your best to try to understand where they're at and also done your best to accommodate them. And ultimately, nobody really wants you to overstretch yourself, right? And be miserable just to serve them, right?
Mhm.
Unless they're truly egotistical. And those people should just get out of your life right now, right? But most people can understand as long as you kind of frame it that way. It's like, hey, I get that you want that. But, that's all I can do, right? And I think that's so beautiful because it really helps us kind of see the kind of people that we're working with, right? And really understand them. And then, but also protect ourselves and make sure that we are living the life that we need to live, our busy lives that every day we need to go through, our obligations, the things that we want, the passions and pursuits that we have, right? And just to wrap up this too, that's the 7 perspective I mentioned, there's 9, right?
Yeah.
So in the future, you're also going to experience some of these. And I think knowing about them is better than not knowing. I'm not saying to jump ahead. So one thing I always recommend to people is that, the reason why certain productivity or, better life kind of advice doesn't land with you is because you're not at the right time to absorb that information. Right. So for example, you told someone like, hey, you're struggling with finances, just meditate, man. Why are you stressing so much? No, I need to eat. I'm hungry, like you can't just tell people to do something that's beyond their current perspective. So the same thing, what I'm telling you here, I'm not telling you to do it. I'm telling you that to know that this is effective and this is where you might be going after you solidify your foundation in these different perspectives that you're going through, right? Your systems, you're letting go, your boundaries. Fantastic, right? And it doesn't mean also, by the way, once you level up, you're never going to touch that again. When something emotional happens, you're always going to go to a level that you're familiar with, right? A perspective that you're familiar with. But it's okay. Know how to deal with it, right? So the 8th perspective is curiosity. It's really fun because sometimes you set boundaries, right? And you're like, hey, I would hope that you'll respect my boundaries. Some people will just not listen. Some people just don't get it, right? I can make a rule that says, hey, don't kill people. Someone's still going to kill people. There's still serial killers out there. I have 2 choices. Am I going to be frustrated at that and make that ruin my life where I'm like just constantly angry about the world? Or do I kind of go and say, hey, you know what? They are not conforming to what my boundaries are. Let me just make sure I'm safe. And then let me ask questions. Why are you like this? What's going on? How does your brain work to make you make these decisions, right? And what are you thinking about? And the beauty of that is as you dive into curiosity, you end up actually becoming more okay with the situation because you end up understanding them. You don't have to accept it. That's not acceptance, but it's just saying like, hey, I get that you're different and let me just figure out what the heck is going on because you're obviously not listening to me, right? Or you're not trying to be respectful of my boundaries too. The 9th perspective is where you bring in empathy and love into the mix. It's unconditional love for everybody. And again, why make it very clear that that is a different unconditional love than perhaps some kind of love that you give when you're in your, let's say, your belonging stage, is because in belonging, you're giving your love with the expectation that they are your people, right? As long as they're my people, I will love you, right? And we've said that many times, right? Like subconsciously, it's like, hey, I love you, but then the moment they do something that's outside your expectation, I don't like you anymore, right? Very common, right? But what perspective 9 is all about, empathy, true empathy, is that no matter what they do, you still love them. You love them because you know that's all they can do, right? You don't judge, right? And you accept that that's who they are. That doesn't mean you don't make your own decisions on whether or not you interact with them, right? But it just means that in that moment, they are who they are. They're doing their best, you're doing your best. But again, getting there is a step-by-step progress. And actually, a lot of people call that 9th perspective like enlightenment. Like if you look at like the Buddhist scriptures and whatever, like that's actually like, a very transcendence, right? And so what I'm trying to communicate with all this, right, and hopefully it resonated with you, is this is a superpower that I'm hoping to give you. One is that you can understand how you got here, right? What is your journey? And to know that it's okay to be through this journey. I got so frustrated when I was younger because I was like, hey, these solutions that helped for me in the past that I have like kind of figured out this is the way to live life changes basically every season. And I didn't understand the change. I didn't understand how I could flip that so back and forth between like being transactional to finding people that I care about to making systems to like being like, letting go and being like, hermit somewhere to like, setting boundaries to like being curious about people to loving people. Like I didn't understand that journey, right? But now you might because you have this resource and you have this information, right? And to also help you make the decisions that will actually serve you the most. If I'm feeling like I need belonging, I'm not going to go and try to build a system. I would say, hey, hug me. I need something, right? Show me that you care about me. I know what to ask, how to ask for help. The other one is when now you're dealing with people, because we have to deal with people, you can analyze and understand where they're coming from. Hey, what perspective are they thinking at? And if they're thinking at a different perspective than you, there is no chance of you trying to get them to understand you, right? But what you can do is operate where they're at and then get the things that you need done through that. So it's hopefully giving you that holistic understanding of like life journey and how to navigate and deal with different people that you see. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. You could say almost all of the problems in life could be solved in step 8 and 9.
Yeah.
But we're always going back to the scratch board every time because life isn't all roses and peaches. You're gonna get a swing and it's gonna come hard and you're gonna have to go back to the scratch board. Your system's never gonna be perfect. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're gonna have to address your needs again. Because like you said, I was trying to address things and I was learning about Maslow's hierarchy, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, now I have a frame, which
Yeah.
I understand and it's logical. So I'm like, get the bottom layer done
Mm-hmm.
and then move on to the next and then move up and then keep moving up until I reach transcendence enlightenment. But life isn't straightforward. You can't just check next level and check nope. And I think that's the difficulty. I think that's where your character really gets tested and it gets built at the same time. Is when you're forced to start recognizing, and it really helps that you put it in 9 stages because you need to recognize, oh, I'm back to the drawing board, but actually I still have these certain skills and resources intact. It's just right now I'm in this stage with this
it's
conundrum.
never back to zero.
It's like, never back to zero.
And I think that's exactly the point is that like I think a lot of us feel like it's back to zero if we don't know where we are. Like for example, let's say we're climbing a mountain, right? And let's say we fall down the mountain a little bit. Happens, sure, right? We're feeling, we slip. If we don't know where we landed, we might think we're at the bottom, yeah? But what I'm doing is I'm helping you set up guide markers up the mountain that says, hey, you fell, but look, you have a base here. You've been here before. Just go back in your tent. You'll get warm again and then climb the mountain again. It's okay, right? And I think that's the beauty of it because I used to hate myself wherever I like, got emotional about something, wherever I got like, frustrated. I was like, I thought I solved this before. Why am I still frustrated about this? Why am I still sad when my friend doesn't invite me out for dinner? Maybe, right? Right? I thought I'll go over that. I thought I wasn't insecure anymore. But the fact of the matter is that we all still will want belonging. In that moment, my reaction was a belonging moment. I was like, hey, I want to belong. I thought they were my people. I thought whenever they would have a meal, they would call me up, right? They didn't do that. I feel like I haven't, connected with them. And again, your reaction in that moment is where it gets really fun. And if you guys want to learn more, please check out the book that's coming up on the Better Life Framework. But what's really interesting is that you have a situation where you are going into this mentality of I want to belong, and because you feel like they're not your people, you push them away. Now, I have a choice to make in that moment because I know the perspectives I can be in. I'm like, do I stay in my 4 which makes me push people away if I don't feel like they're my people? Or do I go into my 5, which is I figure out like, hey, I just want to have a dinner with this guy. Hey, how about we schedule next week? That could be an answer, right? Or I can go to my 3, which is saying like, hey, this time he didn't invite me to dinner. I'm not going to invite him to dinner next time, right? But I don't have to stay at my 4, you see. My 4 would break that relationship off immediately because you're feeling hurt, right? Or you might even go extreme. You say like, no, don't leave me. And then you go like into a crazy, like obsessive, like super overly attached person, right? So, but your 4 makes you do that. And knowing that that's the strengths and the weaknesses of the 4 gives you a platform to say, hey, I've been here before. I know operating this way, like my whole body is screaming for me to do either one of those, right? Either flee or confront, right? But no, the answer is probably to make my life better would be to set up a system. Hey, next week you have time, right? And then leave it at that. Or yeah, maybe just satisfy my revenge a little bit. And then, yeah, I won't go down to dinner next time, But again, you solve it, right? You know what to do. You can move forward. And that's just a simple example I think anyone can resonate with. And but any example, any interpersonal kind of conflict you have, I can help you explain it, which is a really cool thing. Yeah.
That is awesome. Like my reaction would have been, I want to ask them why they didn't invite me or think of inviting me.
Yeah, which is very aggressive, by the way, right? Like, you notice, like, you're confronting them. It's like, why didn't you invite me? I wanted to be part of this. No, right? Sure. And absolutely. And making all these examples to let you know that we're all human.
Yeah.
These are things that happen to us. It's okay to say that. It's okay to feel this way, right? And I love that. I hope that I can show you that there's an empathetic way to level up in life. You don't have to listen to all those like, beat it into submission, right? Like beat your emotions into submission, you're a strong person, no one can touch you. Like, you don't need that, I think, at least, because you should love yourself and accept yourself where you're at. And I think if you can't even give yourself that amount of love and empathy, how can you give it to others?
Exactly. You're exactly right. Because at every point, at every stage in life, someone is going through something and you just don't know what stage they're at. But if you can't even identify that for yourself, how can you start reacting in ideally an optimal manner, or at least finding a way to be okay with it, even if you go down the revenge route?
Yeah. Which is okay too, right? Some people might want to do that, right? And again, it's really funny, like, I built up a reputation in the last few years of like being very zen. So like a lot of my friends, whenever they get into that mode, it's like, oh, I feel really bad about this. My coworker did something to me, or like, my partner did something, whatever. I just want to like, snap back and like take revenge in a way, right? Like, micro revenge, right? It's like I'm gonna ignore him later and stuff like that. Again, past me was very much like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that, right? Because like at that time I already had kind of knew that revenge isn't the right way to go around things. It just hurts you and hurts them. Like, because ultimately you still want to be there for them, right? Even if someone ignores you for dinner, like you're upset because you didn't get a dinner. So why would you skip on dinner next time? Like, it's not logical, to be honest, right? So you're not actually getting the results you want. So I would tell people that, hey, maybe you're not getting the result you want. And so what happened was that people eventually stopped telling me whenever they had like revenge moment thoughts, right? Which is okay. I mean, like, that's up to them, right? Telling me or not. But like, what I realized was that they felt shameful to even tell me that thoughts of revenge kind of came up for them. And so now today, the me today is like, hey, you know what? That's normal. I love you for thinking that even, right? It's normal to want that. Of course, it's up to you to execute that or not, right? Again, there's options now. There's options, right? You go up a level, go down a level, up to you, right? But knowing that it's a very human thing, and if you really feel very emotional about it, maybe it'll help you overcome your emotions. Just know that it won't actually get you the result that you want, right? But if you want to do it, by all means. So that's the same message I give you, Nadine, right? And everyone else out there, is that love where you're at. Don't hate it, right? But just recognize that there are different places that you could be at, right? And try to see like whether or not those are the places you want to be, right? Does that give you the better outcome, the better life that you want, right? And where do you see your best self, right? Do you see your best self at perspective 8, for example, where you're asking questions all the time? Again, intentional questions that are not attacking, but rather trying to understand, right? Because the why didn't you invite me is very different from, oh no, what did you want to accomplish with the dinner, right? you thinking about? That's a very different one. Maybe they have a whole different reason for having that conversation. Maybe they wanted to talk about a diagnosis that was really on their mind, and they just wanted to talk about it with someone that, they thought, was better medically knowledge, whatever, right? There are reasons for that. And you might still feel offended by it, sure, right? But at least you're getting them to share from a place of like, hey, I care about you. Just want to know what's going on, man, right? How can I be there for you? Versus like, why don't you include me? And again, that's just an example for 4, but I can give infinite examples on the rest. Yeah. Nadine, does that sound good to you? Like, would you like to end here? Like, this is all make sense to you so far?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it makes me think, because I've always wondered, you being so zen. I've always wondered, doesn't Conrad get tired of being asked the same questions? But then I realize now, you can always approach it from a different perspective. And that in itself also is you applying your own skills and practicing what you have learned and what you are preaching.
Sharing. Let's use the word sharing.
Sharing, yes, that's better. That's better. Yes.
Yeah.
And in turn, it helps you grow. It helps you to level up. And even just, let's say you only ask that question, like, why didn't you invite me? Because you were actually authentically curious. Genuinely curious. Yeah. That was the word I was going for, yes.
Yeah.
And but of course it can come out really aggressive, like you said.
Yeah.
So there's different ways of communicating, but if you're not cognizant of the way you're communicating because you're not sure, you're just reacting instead of, that all makes sense now. I have so much to reflect on. And and you also mentioned the better framework for life.
Better life framework, yeah.
Better life framework. I'm gonna be looking for that.
Yeah. So real quick, speaking of the Better Life framework, this episode is proudly supported by the Coast 3 Family Foundation, and specifically our philosophies over at our website at the.x3.family. Over the course of helping hundreds of thousands of people in the last, I think 4 or 5 years, we've learned that people think differently at different times. And that's totally okay. We all have different perspectives in how we approach life. And that usually comes with the experiences that we have, right? And the truth of the matter is that not every single piece of advice will be useful for you in this current moment. We've all had the experience of reading hundreds of books, right? Or watching thousands of self-help videos out there to try to improve our life, but they don't land always the way that we expect them to. We don't immediately get an aha moment and then our life changes, right? It takes time. So what we tried to do was to break down all the different things that we understand about the world, the way that we see the world, into really actionable frameworks and components for us to understand ourselves better, right? So that we can finally apply those things that we care about and apply the change that we want for ourselves to improve our life. So for example, if you want to, set better habits, or you want to find purpose in your life, you need to figure out where you're at right now in order to know whether or not that's a useful tool for you to improve your life. If you think you want to go on a retreat, if you think you want to do meditation, if you want to do any of the things that you hear about that are nice sounding buzzwords, know where you are first, right? And the way that we do that is to give you a framework, to give you philosophies to try to understand your life through, and try to help you understand and really figure out where to unlock the potential. And I think with Nadine, I'd like to jump to you, where this is where I think it's so important, where you're smart. You're so smart. You've read all the right things. You've watched all the right videos. You have thought deeply about your life. You've questioned yourself. You've done all these things. But the only thing that I feel that you needed, right, was unlocking. And the unlocking was just to help you categorize all these different things that you understand already about your life, to help you break down and know hey, this bucket is this thing, this bucket is this thing, and that bucket is that thing, so they don't all come together and don't cloud and confuse you, right? Because the more we absorb, the more we get confused. So maybe, Nadine, I can get you to share a bit about maybe the experience you've had here today and how categorization, and now the philosophy of the Better Life framework, how you think that will help you moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to think I'm diving after one solution after the other, and wasting my time because, hey, I stuck to this habit thing for like 3 to 6 months. And while there have been certain improvements in maybe my physical health, other things were let go of because I had to sacrifice the time to keep that up, right? My dissatisfaction with that was not because there wasn't a gain or I wasted my time. It was because the actual issues that really were plaguing me or pulling me down were not being addressed. Like maybe my physical health was just not supposed to be the priority that I was working at, but it was what I chose because that was what I was learning at the time. So if you feel like you've spent so much time and effort trying these buzzword solutions that people have spoken about and have promised it's life altering, don't be hard on yourself because you did not waste any of your time. All of that knowledge, it's helpful. It's there. It's already with you. No one can take that away from you. The only thing for me is I still felt completely lost because I couldn't put into a framework. I couldn't understand where and when to apply it. That's right. So with this discussion I just had with Conrad about leveling up, about breakthroughs, and about the 9 stages that he broke down very succinctly, now I'm able to digest. And when I come across a situation that makes me feel helpless, I can better use all of that knowledge that I've been reading, that I've been watching videos on, and that I've been trying to apply in my life. And I can actually tailor it because now I can understand what stage I am either jumping back to or I find myself in. And maybe the conundrum or the issue that I am dealing with is something that actually I've done this before. I've gotten through it. I can review from my experience, and probably the same solution won't work, but I can use that. And that in itself, being able to even think in that way, like to know I feel a bit solid. I'm on solid ground. Like I feel like maybe I took a step back. Doesn't matter. At least I am on solid ground and I know how to move forward. Or I don't know how, but I have options. And depending what choice I make, I'll just own my choice and move forward. And that in itself is going to help me, I think, move through life and be okay with the decisions that I make because now I am putting the intent there and also acknowledging and seeing the bigger picture. So I really appreciate you sharing that with me, Conrad. And I look forward to just applying these principles in life and maybe being able to be a better person out of it and help others because I am growing and I want to continue to also see others grow and support them.
That is awesome. And I'm so glad that you've gotten this today. Really, the philosophies and the frameworks are here, as you say, to help you build a foundation, right? Help you feel safe and secure and confident to accept whatever comes your way and to know what tool in your toolkit can you take out and solve the challenges that you see, right? And have a breakthrough. And I think that's all everyone needs. You guys are all amazing, wonderful, smart people, right? That are doing your best to try to figure out how to live the life that you want, to be your best version of you. All we're trying to do is to help you break that down into a structured, right, easy to follow, concise way to understand the world. The world is simpler than you think, right? And people say that all the time, right? Just live simply, right? Your sister's saying, hey, don't worry about so much, life is simple, right? But simple how? Life is simple because things have been abstracted for you. You can say a bridge is simple, right? A bridge across, a river could be simple. But do you know the engineering behind it? It's pretty difficult, right? But all the engineering behind the structures that we see in our world, where from skyscrapers to bridges to cars to whatever, they're done so that you can have a simple life. You can you can utilize them, you can consume them. So the same way here, we're helping you make it so that your brain doesn't have to work so hard, right, on these, abstract things, and rather focus your brain energy on living the life that you want. So if you guys want to check that out at the.x3.family. The link is in the description as well. And with that, let's get back to the episode. Well, Nadine, I really appreciate you being here. Usually when we end, we like to have our guests kind of share, one piece of advice for someone who might have been in your shoes a day ago, a month ago, a year ago. What do you think is one piece of knowledge that you can share with them?
I think whatever your thoughts are in this moment, whatever your emotions are in this moment, you're not actually alone. And I know that's really cliche to say, but you're not the only one thinking it or feeling it. And there's always help if you want to find the help. So even if you feel like it's the end and there's no hope and everything seems dark, please don't give up. Just find anything that can bring you comfort, that can bring you stillness, peace, or even joy. And cling to that. And it's okay. Because slowly but surely, maybe that is your avenue to having a switch and a flame turn on or a light at the end of the tunnel.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nadine. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to listen to you and inviting me to your wonderful home. And I hope that you and anyone else at home who resonates with this will find the better life that fits them. Yeah. So with that in mind, please take care and see you guys next week. Bye-bye.